Good morning, boys and girls. Here we are into week 4. Once we finish this week, we're going to be one half of the way through this class. It's amazing how time goes in the summer. I'm going to give you 3 little mini lectures this week because, frankly, it's easier for me to close caption a short video than it is for me to, with my 3 little fingers, to do a longer one. So this one's basically going to be about the thesis statement that we talked about last week, and I'm going to try to make a lesson for that. But let me start with a little bit of educational theory. The way education works is there are basically 3 steps. You are given background on the material, exposure to the concepts, then you're given a chance to practice those concepts, and then you're given a chance to test those concepts, all with my help, of course. So you notice each week there's a video lecture like this one you're looking at now, and then usually there's a reading from the textbook. Well, those are designed to give you the background exposure to the material that you're going to need to do the rest of the activities and the assessment for the week. Okay? So the first thing to do is to listen to the video, stop it and take your notes if you need to, and then if there's a reading assigned, do the reading. That's background stuff. And then if there's an assignment due in the week, there's a very specific assignment sheet that details exactly what I'm asking you to do in the activities and the final assessment of your learning. Okay, so these 3 things, the lecture, the careful assignment of the reading, and the design of the assignment sheets, I work for hours on those to make them as clear as I possibly can. I edit them, I revise them, I peer review them with my colleagues, I come back, I redo them. I've been redoing them over the course of 10 years or so of experience. So what I'm getting a sense from some folks is you're not using the material I'm giving you. You're not taking the time. And folks, you have to do this. And I'm talking about some hours, not 5 minutes. So to take this amount of material, which I've prepared as carefully as I can for you, not that I don't make mistakes, but I'm as careful and as precise and as revised as many times as I can to make it clear for you. This is a process of hours and hours and hours of work for me. So for you to sit down in 5 minutes and scamper through this stuff is frankly disingenuous. It doesn't work. The human mind cannot work that way, and you and I are not the one exception to the rule. That's a hard and fast rule. So expect to spend some time, and I mean some hours, not 5 minutes or half an hour. And then the folks who do that sit down, scamper through the material, and then send me an email saying you don't understand. What you're telling me is a pretty clear message. You haven't invested the time, and you're asking me to say it all over again for your benefit. And it's not going to be any clearer the next time. When I can say it all over again, I can take the hours and reiterate everything, but it's not going to be any clearer. It's as clear as it's going to get. So what's sort of tweaking the system is some of you folks, frankly, and I know this, are not investing the time. I'm not judging, I'm not criticizing. Maybe you don't have the time. That's a choice you make. You're adults, and I'm not your mother. But remember, if you're not understanding, 98% of the probability is that you're not investing the time. And that, I can help you with, but there's no substitute for time spent. It's just that simple. And in the summer, when things are going twice as fast, you need more time, not less. I don't like it either, particularly, but that's the way it is. So be sure that you spend an adequate amount of time, and again, an adequate amount of time to view a 20-minute lecture is probably an hour, because you need to stop, take your notes, go back, rehear things. The time to adequately read an assignment in the textbook is probably an hour or 2. Okay, so just sitting down and consuming the stuff is not going to get the job done. It just can't work that way. I understand we live in a consumer culture where that's the way we live our lives, but that habit of life does not work in this situation. Okay, enough said. This part of the lecture is over. You know, so I want to talk about the thesis statement that we worked on last week. I gave you that for a reason, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But first, you should know that I do use student work once in a while as a lesson in my lectures and my activities. I never identify the writer. It's always anonymous. In this case, the writer chose to identify themselves, and that's fine. That's up to you entirely, but I will never identify the writer. So think about that experience last week. Think about those of you who approached the assignment in good faith. Think about the frustration that you felt trying to do the discussion to the best of your ability and tease out the ideas and figure out what ideas were important, and then talk to other people about that. All of that sort of frustration and confusion was the way a reader feels when you give them a thesis statement that is like that. That's several ideas just sort of put together. Putting things together does not create a relationship. You stick two ideas next to each other on the page, that doesn't create any relationship between the ideas. So, let me say this thesis statement for a draft was perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but the ideas were not under control, and so as you felt, the reader couldn't figure out what was the main point of the essay. So going in with that confusion into an essay for a reader, the confusion usually doesn't clear up. The confusion usually gets worse. So let me talk about this thesis statement briefly in the way a reader would approach this. And I know what happens psychologically with a reader because I've made extensive studies of this. So if you want to pull that thesis statement up from last week on your machine, I've got it open in a second window here, and we'll look at it, or you can just listen. So we have two ideas. Global warming might have a few positive benefits like better growing seasons, but those benefits are not worth the negative outcomes. Okay, two ideas might have a few positive benefits, but those benefits are not worth the negative outcomes. Okay, you have two ideas, and those ideas are equal in importance because of the coordinating conjunction but. That means A and B are equal. So if I had to choose one as the main point, I would choose the first one for the simple reason that the reader supports that statement with an example. Global warming might have a few positive benefits like better growing seasons. That's a statement that is supported with some logical evidence. Second one, these benefits are not worth the negative outcomes. No examples of negative outcomes. So if I had to choose, the two ideas are equal because of the word but. But if I had to choose, I'd choose the first one because it has some support to it. Okay? Of course, we as people only view the positive outcomes that benefit us. That's a third point, sort of related back to positive benefits. But of course, again, is a conjunction that implies exception. It still implies equality. It's neither a subordinating nor a coordinating conjunction. And do not acknowledge the negative impact. So there again, we only look at what benefits us, and we don't acknowledge the negative impact. Again, the coordinating conjunction and means both ideas are of equal importance. So you can't pick which one is the most important by looking at the texture of the sentence. Okay? So far we've got four ideas. Those four ideas are put together on the page, and they're put together in a way that says you've got four ideas of equal importance. So when you couldn't figure out which one was equally important, you couldn't have given what you had to work with. Okay? Do not acknowledge the negative impact it has on animals that have become extinct and our planet, which is becoming more dry. Okay, so there's some little bits of evidence. Animals more extinct, planet more dry. There's some concrete evidence that appears to support the second statement. Negative impact. Okay? So, but again, the way the thing is built, you don't know which one is in control, so you have to guess, and you're left on your own devices to guess because of the glue that holds the thing together. Okay, so if I had to guess, and here's the real sort of internal flaw that one would identify, and this writer would have fixed this, I know they would have. The real internal flaw is, if I'm going to choose and I have no other possibility to choose, I'm going to choose the last thing I see because that's closest to the actual body of my essay. There's sort of this shape to an intro, and when you get down to the bottom of the V here, that's where the thesis statement should be. So I'm going to guess that that is the thesis statement. Don't acknowledge the negative impact. But I also notice as I'm looking at this that this directly contradicts the first statement that it might have a few positive benefits like better growing seasons. So the thing is working against itself and it's pulling itself to pieces, and I as a reader are completely lost. And this is due to the way the thing is built. There's nothing wrong with the ideas. They're all good ideas. But the way the thing is constructed leaves me completely at a loss, and I have to make a guess that that last statement is probably the thesis statement because that's where the thesis statement tends to go. But there's no evidence that really supports that guess. It's a guess. So then I go into reading the essay, and I'm basing my approach on a guess, which may or may not work out, which means, communication pretty much stops. So that's what happens when you present a reader with a bunch of ideas in a thesis statement, and the ideas are not clearly related to each other, and the relationship is not shown by the words you use. Okay? Now this, again, is not rocket science. This is nuts and bolts. If you mean that one idea is more important than the other, don't use a coordinating conjunction. There are reasons why we teach you those words. And the reason why we teach you those words is that those are the tools that hold the thing together and telegraph to the reader how the thing works. So basically, this writer's given us a number of ideas, and they're all good ideas, but they're all put together in a way using the nuts and bolts. And I'm talking about and, but, or, those conjunctions are what do the work for you. The thing is put together in a way that we have no idea what is more important, what is the most important, what is the actual thesis. We have no idea, and so the frustration that we feel in trying to figure it out is work that a reader should not have to do. The writer should do this work and make that clear. Okay? So again, I appreciate the good faith with which most of you approach this assignment, and just know when you write a thesis statement like that, you are causing in your reader the same kind of frustration and confusion that you felt being presented with this thesis statement. So be sure you clean it up, be sure you use the correct words, be sure that one idea is absolutely clearly in control by placement and by the way you glue it to the other ideas around it. If you do that, your thesis statement will be just fine. Okay, so that's lecture number 1. I'll see you in a bit for lecture number 2.